Medieval coins look so different from ancient coins. While most Roman and Greek coins are relatively thick, not very wide, and have a surprisingly high relief, the planchets of medieval coins are razor thin. Their art is also much simpler than that of those made during the classical period. At least that's the rule for most coins from the early and high Middle Ages. And basically they just look completely different. And it's really easy to fall for the simplest explanation of, oh, everything after the fall of Rome was just horrible. It took Western civilization 1,000 years to recover the levels of development and its splendor of Rome. Well, you just have to look at a Gothic cathedral to see what kinds of wonderful art people from the Middle Ages were capable of. And since we enjoy giving full explanations here in this channel, let's delve into a bit of the history of coin manufacture. Let's understand how the dies, the negative images that would be imprinted on the planchets of coins, were made in the classical period, why they were made the way they were, what changed as the classical period came to its end, and finally, what kinds of political, technological, and technical variables changed during the medieval period that led coins to be made in such a different way. Let's remember that coins were always a very big deal for any emperor, monarch, or any kind of leader. Coins were never something considered secondary. It was one of their main ways of proclaiming their authority in a world where information, including the information of who was in charge, moved very slowly. Okay, let's get started. So let's begin actually going all the way back to the 2nd century BC. Here we have a coin from the Seleucid Kingdom, one of the successor states that emerged after the sudden death of Alexander the Great. Wonderful coin, no? This piece beautifully illustrates the way dies were made since the beginning of coinage. At this time, the dies used to strike these coins, they were hand-carved. It all started with a metal cylinder, generally made out of bronze. This bronze was soft enough that die engravers could carve out the designs on this cylinder, generally using iron tools like chisels. Every little detail you see on this coin was slowly and meticulously carved by an artist at the flat face of that bronze cylinder. After they were done with the image, the cylinder received some sort of heat treatment to harden it, and off it went to the mint, where it would be used to mint maybe up to 10,000 coins before it became so worn that a new one had to be made. And when I mean that every single part of that die was handmade, I mean it. If we look at the reverse, with this lovely image of the goddess Athena holding her shield, spear, and a little Nike, all within an olive wreath, notice there are quite a few inscriptions here. That's the message the Seleucid king wanted to pass to whoever held this coin. It reads, Basileus Antiocho Euergeto, of King Antiochus the Benefactor. If we make a little diagram with a zoomed in image of the coin, we can do some reverse engineering to see how the engraver made all of those words and how he made them fit neatly in this design. So after sculpting Athena and the wreath, which served as an external limit to the design, he started making the legends by marking a series of dots on the fields, which ensured an even spacing between the letters. Imagine how frustrating it would have been to have all of the work to engrave that piece of art and then throw it all away because the letters, the proclamation of the king, it was something important, because it looked bad. So first, he added the dots to define the spacing of the letters. Then, once he made sure that it would all fit, he connected the dots, making the letters. Quite an ingenious way on the part of the artist, actually. And this week's episode is kindly sponsored by L5, the new online marketplace for ancient coins. L5 is a platform that focuses on trust, transparency, and low fees. It is an environment where you can safely buy coins to add to your collection, knowing every item listed has been vetted by specialists, with a lifetime guarantee of authenticity, and the new system of online bidding that ensures fair, transparent bidding. No sniping, no shield bids, just a fair trading environment for buyers and sellers. L5's proposal is to eliminate all uncertainties beginners and experienced collectors alike might have when buying a coin, while offering a low-cost service with no listing fees and a buyer's premium of just 5%. Make sure to check out L5.com for what I believe is a new platform that the ancient coin market was in need for. As we get into the Roman imperial period, we see an optimization in the die-making process. To illustrate this, we're looking at this denarius of Emperor Trajan, struck around the year 105 AD. There were no technical changes on how the portrait and the art was made on these coins, if compared to the coins of previous centuries. The die engravers carved the portraits on the dies by hand. However, at this time we start seeing the production number of coins skyrocket. The Romans really produced coins in industrial scales. We're talking about an empire of tens of millions of people, an economy orders of magnitude larger than that of the Greeks, and a sufficient number of coins had to be produced to ensure this economy worked properly. Like the goods circulated and they were exchanged for something that existed in sufficient numbers. Roman mints spewed out tens of millions of coins every year. This enormous demand generated the necessity of optimizing the process of die engraving, especially with the number of letters the Roman coins typically had. They would have needed armies of engravers to write so many words on so many dies. I'm going to put a picture of the obverse of our coin on your screen, and I want you to pay attention to the legends. In particular at around the 10 o'clock area. Look at these two letters G's, these two G's together that show up forming the abbreviation of Augustus Germanicus. They look quite similar, don't they? Maybe a bit too similar? That's because they were added to the dice using a punch. A punch was a quicker method of adding simpler shapes to a die, removing the need to painstakingly engrave each individual letter. They had a series of iron punches with all letters of the alphabet and made the legends by simply, as the name suggests, punching the iron punch into the die, marking the shape of the letter at the right place and ensuring visual consistency throughout the legends. I'm adding a small drawing on your screen to illustrate what I mean. Imagine this thick needle with the shape of a letter, in this case a letter G at the tip. Now imagine they had one of these for every letter. And as we can see with this little cutout that I have made, both G's on the legends have the exact same shape, down to the last detail, indicating they were most likely made with the same punch. Apart from improving the efficiency of manufacturing dies with this technique, punching legends on a die would have taken someone minutes rather than hours. They also allowed for a more optimized distribution of labor at the mint. Making a new die didn't have to be the sole responsibility of a single engraver, and different tasks could be assigned to people of different skills. Engraving the portraits was likely assigned to the best engravers. The reverses could be assigned to engravers of maybe lesser skill, and the punches, well, these could be added for last, and punching these in didn't require any artistic skill, it only required someone with good eye-hand coordination. Later on, around the 3rd century, as inflation became a problem and the mints were producing mountains of debased coins with almost no silver in them, the need for more dies to strike more and more coins became a serious issue, to a point that die engravers had to simplify the art on the portraits and the use of simpler punches when making the legends. We can clearly see this phenomenon manifest with this Antoninianus of Emperor Gallienus. This was struck around the year 265, somewhere around that. It's not only the portrait that became much simpler and sculpted in lower relief. Check out the legends. Not only did the legends become much shorter, all there is to read here is Gallienus Augustus, but instead of having individual punches for each letter, the simplest punches were used to make lots of different letters. The letters I, E, N, V, and A, in this case, all use the same straight punch, with small variations between them, or simply arranged in different shapes to make different letters. This of course deteriorated the readability of the legends, but at such desperate times, producing coins of high quality wasn't really the highest priority. What mattered was to make lots of coins, quickly, and to use the minimum amount of labor necessary to properly identify the emperor. That's pretty much it. And finally, we entered the medieval period. Out of the many differences between Europe and the Mediterranean sphere under the Romans and its medieval counterpart, one of the most important changes was the political fragmentation that characterized this medieval period. One of the results of this fragmentation was the difficulty to mobilize resources to the production of coins. Well, actually to the production of everything. The economy was simpler, wars were fought with smaller armies, it was harder to concentrate lots of resources for any organized endeavor. An important Roman mint could employ hundreds of people. If we count the people indirectly involved in the procurement of metals, distribution, logistics, this number could be in the thousands. The operating costs of the massive ovens needed to melt the metal and make these nice, round, thick flans you find in Roman denarii, for example, the training of engravers, it all required a level of resources only an empire could provide. It really was an industrial effort in a pre-industrial world. And you might ask me then, well, the Greeks during the classical period were also politically fragmented, but they produced great looking coins. Yes, but here we are talking about much lower production numbers, apart from a few exceptions like the millions of Athenian autetadrachma, which were the main export of Athens. Most Greek poleis produced a much smaller number of coins, and a lot more care was given to the production of these. There was also a cultural environment that dictated. One of the main ways of a polis to gain prestige was by having beautiful, good-looking coinage. In short, the Romans produced millions of good-looking coins, while the Greeks just a few thousand of great-looking coins. So, back to medieval Europe. This new highly fragmented reality of the post-Roman states meant there simply weren't enough resources nor the willingness to mint high-quality, super complex coins. The production of coins was also concentrated at the hands of guilds. These were small groups of artisans that held the monopoly and the knowledge of certain industrial or semi-industrial tasks. One of those was minting coins. And in certain areas, guilds generally came in an agreement with the local feudal lord, and this system generated a bottleneck on the number of artisans that were capable of producing coin dice. You could only work at the mint if you were also part of a guild, so there was this concentration of the power and the authority to produce coins that wasn't very propitious for the development of higher quality coins, basically. These material limitations led to a series of constraints on the production of coins. Where once a mint could employ hundreds of people, now guilds could be as small as a few dozen people. The dice, previously made out of bronze, soft enough to receive beautiful carvings in high relief, now had to be made out of iron. This made them more resistant, they would last for a lot longer, but they were also incredibly hard and difficult to engrave. Dice from the High Middle Ages were made almost exclusively with punches, rather than a mix of hand-carved parts and punched letters. The dice were simply too hard to engrave. There are some medieval dies that had parts of its design chiseled in, but these tend to be of very low relief or relatively simple compared to those from antiquity. It's better if I illustrate this with an example. Here is a French denier from the county of Périgord, struck between 1100 and 1200 AD. Let's do something similar to what I've done with the coin of Emperor Gallienus. We're going to use a visual diagram of the coin. Look at the letters on this obverse. The legends reads Lodoicus. Notice how the vertical part of the letter L, the vertical part of the D, the I, the central part of that very blocking looking C, they all come from the same punch used to make this die. The two letters O are also identical, so that's another punch being repeated. The letter S is positioned horizontally and it's made out of two half-moon shapes, the same half-moon punch that was used on completing the D letter. It was all meant to use as few punches as possible. Some of the more complex shapes like the V, the cross at the center, and the tiny little cross at the very top, which indicated the beginning and end of the legends, they all had their own separate punches as they were important parts of the coin. The same applies to the reverse. Here it reads Egolissime, and once more we have a series of repeated punches on different letters. Pay particular attention to the letter M. It's just three I's placed side by side. It doesn't even look like an M. The engravers must have come to the conclusion that making a complex punch in the shape of an M, or connecting the two vertical lines of the letter M with a V-shaped punch, was too much work, or it was too complex, so they just went with 3 vertical lines. Another important change was the thickness of these coins. They're razor thin. You see, larger mints that were better equipped normally had access to more powerful ovens, capable of fully liquefying metal. This allowed the manufacture of these compact, thick flans, more typical of ancient coins. The liquid metal would be poured on small circular receptacles with the right shape of the flan. Such powerful ovens might not have been available at many medieval mints, so different methods of preparing the flans had to be used. The two most common methods of flan preparation were through the passing of a heated ingot through rollers. These rollers would flatten the ingot with each pass until it was a thin sheet of metal, which would be cut on the shape of the coin, probably with scissors, or, in more precarious cases, the heated ingots would be hammered until they were flat, and then they would be cut. Roman mints also reheated the flans prior to striking, making them a little bit softer and easier to strike. Medieval coins were often cold struck. As we advance in time towards the Renaissance, the end of the Middle Ages, we start seeing more complex techniques coming back to coin manufacture. Here we have a gigliato, struck around the 1320s, 1340s at the Kingdom of Naples, at the south of the Italian peninsula. Here we can see the coin is still rather thin. The designs are still made using punches. However, the punches now are much more complex. On the obverse we have an image of the king sitting on his throne, holding an orb and a scepter, and the entire image of the king was made out of a single, highly complex punch. Each of the letters on the legends are once again individual punches, rather than an improvised use of a single punch to make different shapes that kinda looked like letters. On the reverse, it's the same thing. The letters on the legends are made out of individual punches, and we have this wonderfully decorated massive cross dominating the design. If we look at the details that repeat themselves around the cross, like the decorations at the tips, we see that they don't have the exact same shape, which seems to indicate this entire cross was one massive punch, rather than a design made out of smaller punches and added to the final die piece by piece. Yes, I mean, we aren't back to the high relief, wonderful coins of the ancient world, but we can see that the quality of die engraving started to improve as the years went on, which would eventually lead to the beautiful coins of the early modern period. But that's a talk for another video. And here we have it. Now you understand why medieval coins look so different from ancient coins, and why they aren't necessarily inferior, but they are rather a fruit of a different time, a different political moment in European history, which dictated the kinds of materials, techniques, and working conditions a mint had to work with. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you have a medieval coin? Or what is your favorite medieval coin design? Let us know in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.